that?
I feel like I was a man. I don't let nobody else dictate how I feel about myself. We can't have too much negativity going on, and you know, you want our players to be the best version of ourselves for y'all, you know. I think I'm just thankful overall. Like, I don't look at anything as a negative. When you start looking at things as a negative, and that's when you grow spite and hatred, you know, and nothing positive comes out of that, so.
They tried to humble Shedeur Sanders, and he didn't just resist it. He dismantled the entire setup right there in real time. No yelling, no attitude, no viral meltdown. Just one simple question back. What does humbling mean? And suddenly the whole room shifted, because now it wasn't about him anymore. It was about them. It was about what they were really trying to say without saying it directly. And if you actually break that moment down, it tells you everything about where Shedeur is mentally right now and why this situation in Cleveland is already getting tense. Because let's be honest, that question was never just about growth. It wasn't just about learning or adjusting to the league. It was layered. It was designed to push him into a box. You were the man at Colorado, you were the man at Jackson State, you were the guy everywhere, but now you're not. That's what they were really saying. And then they wrapped it in that word, humbling. Because that word sounds soft, it sounds fair, it sounds like a normal step in every young player's journey. But in this context, it was a test to see if Shedeur would accept that his identity needed to shrink a little bit.
I'm just happy, I'm thankful, I'm blessed, you know. I was in a position to where I can handle everything that comes my way, so now I feel bulletproof.
And here's the part nobody is talking about. Most young players do accept that. They hear that kind of question and they immediately go into safe mode. They say, yeah, it was humbling, I learned a lot, I just want to grow. And there's nothing wrong with that answer, but it also gives the media control of the narrative. It confirms the storyline. It lets them define the arc. And once that happens, every future question builds off that same foundation. But Shedeur didn't do that. He stopped it at the root. He said, what does humbling mean? And in that moment, he forced them to expose the real angle. And when they tried to explain it again, basically saying you went from being the guy to not being that right away, he answered even stronger. He said, I feel like I was the man. I don't let nobody dictate how I feel about myself. That right there, that's not arrogance. That's self-definition.
We can't have too much negativity going on, and you know, you want our players to be the best version of ourselves for y'all, you know. So I think it's a community thing. I think we all, like as a group, have to, because everybody's gonna have kids. Everybody has that. You don't want your kids to be the side effects of, you know what I'm saying, what you done did in life, the negativity and all this different type of stuff. You don't want that.
This is where it gets dangerous, because once a player decides he's the one defining his identity, the usual media playbook stops working. You can't box him in with labels. You can't guide him into narratives. You can't slowly chip away at his confidence with subtle framing, because he's already decided where he stands. And whether you agree with it or not, that kind of mental clarity is hard to shake. Now, let's slow this down for a second, because this wasn't just one answer. The entire press conference had the same energy. Question after question, you could feel the attempts to steer him somewhere, to get him to admit something, to get him to show frustration, to get him to react. And every single time, he stayed locked in.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful that everything happened how it happened. I'm thankful that my appreciation for a lot of things is what it is now. I'm thankful that I don't really have to chase. I'm thankful I got a great family. I'm thankful I got to see great people, that I'm able to be inspiration to people, because I mean, like, I think I'm just thankful overall.
They asked him to reflect on the past year, everything that happened, everything that changed, everything he went through. He said, I'm thankful. Not once, not twice. He kept repeating it. I'm thankful everything happened how it happened. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for the position I'm in. I'm thankful I don't have to chase. I'm thankful I can inspire people. And again, if you're not paying attention, you might brush that off as just generic positivity, but it's not. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Gratitude is how he controls the narrative internally. Because if you frame everything as something you're thankful for, you remove the negative weight from it. You don't let it turn into anger. You don't let it become resentment. You don't let it affect your performance. It becomes part of your growth instead of something holding you back. He even explained it clearly. He said, when you start looking at things as negative, that's when you grow spite and hatred, and nothing positive comes from that. So instead, he chooses to view everything differently. He said, I'm happy, I'm blessed, I feel bulletproof. And that word, bulletproof, matters, because this is where young players usually make a mistake. They let one bad stretch, one narrative, one situation crack their confidence. They start questioning themselves. They start adjusting who they are to fit what people expect. They start playing not to fail, instead of playing to succeed. And once that happens, it's hard to get back to who you were. Shedeur is doing the opposite. He's doubling down on who he is. And that's why that humbling question didn't land. Because in his mind, nothing about his identity changed. The situation changed, the environment changed, the circumstances changed. But who he is as a person, who he is as a player, that didn't shift. Now, let's connect this to the bigger picture, because this is not happening in a vacuum. This is a player who went through one of the most talked about draft slides we've seen in years. This is a player who had people questioning him before he even stepped into a real NFL role. This is a player who walked into a new team, new system, new expectations, and immediately had to deal with all of that noise. And instead of reacting emotionally, he's sitting there talking about mindset. That's not normal.
And that's why this moment matters more than people realize. Because when you pair that mindset with what he said about the new coaching staff, you start to see the full picture. He talked about how the coaches embrace players as people, how they push them every day, how the meeting room, the field, the weight room all feel different. He said it's a new vibe, a new energy. And then he said something that really hit. He said, the only thing we missing is y'all. He was talking to the media. He was saying, we're building something inside this building, but the energy outside doesn't match it yet. This is where it gets dangerous again, because now he's not just answering questions, he's challenging the environment. He's calling out the tone. He's saying, if you want us to win, the energy around the team has to reflect that. And Cleveland is not a place that just accepts that kind of message easily, because Cleveland has history. Cleveland has scars. Cleveland has seen too many new vibes fall apart. So when Shedeur says bring positive energy, some people hear that as optimism, and others hear it as premature. But here's the part nobody is talking about. He's not asking for fake positivity. He's asking for balance. He's asking for the negativity not to dominate the narrative before anything even happens. And that's a fair point. At the same time, this is where the pressure on him increases. Because once you speak like that publicly, everything you do gets tied back to it. If he plays well, people will say he set the tone early. If he struggles, people will say he was worried about vibes instead of production. That's the trade-off. And he knows that. Which brings us back to that original moment. What does humbling mean? That question wasn't just about the past year. It was about control. It was about who gets to define his journey. And in that moment, he made it clear, it's going to be him. Now here's where this connects to legacy. Because every great quarterback has that moment early on where they decide who they're going to be mentally. Not physically, not skill-wise, mentally. Are you going to let the league shape you, or are you going to bring your own mindset into it? Are you going to react to pressure, or are you going to stay steady through it? Are you going to accept narratives, or are you going to challenge them? That's what we just saw. And it's early. Very early, but those moments matter because they tell you how a player is wired. And right now, Shedeur is wired in a way that doesn't bend easily. Now, the real question is, can he back it up? Because everything he's saying sounds strong. Everything he's showing mentally looks solid. But in this league, it always comes back to performance. You can control the narrative in a press conference, but on Sundays, the game controls everything. So now, the debate shifts. Was Shedeur Sanders right to reject that humbling label and stand firm in his identity? Or is that kind of mindset risky for a young quarterback who hasn't proven it yet at the highest level? Because if he goes out there and delivers, this moment becomes the start of his identity. But if things don't go his way, this is the clip people will come back to. And that's what makes this so interesting. They tried to humble him. He didn't move. Now we see what happens when the games actually start.